We went to Walmart after the concert because none of us wanted the night to end yet. We were loud in that careless way that comes after standing too close to speakers for hours. Our ears rang. Our voices felt loose. We smelled like sweat, spilled drinks, and dust from the parking lot. It was past midnight, the kind of time when everything feels thinner and less supervised. The parking lot was mostly empty. A few cars sat crooked, engines cooling. One entrance was open, glowing white. The rest of the building looked sealed and asleep. We went in for water and snacks, still buzzing, still moving too fast. Inside, the store felt wrong in a quiet way. Not scary at first, just hollow. The ceiling lights were on but not fully bright. Some aisles were dimmer than others. The air felt cooler than it should have. We wandered longer than needed. I picked up things without thinking and put them back. My jacket ended up draped over my arm. At checkout, only self-checkout was running. After we paid, we realized the open exit was on the opposite side of the store. The signs pointed us through Garden Center. The Garden Center doors were half closed. One pushed open just enough for carts. The lighting dropped as soon as we crossed the threshold. Overhead fixtures were spaced farther apart, and several were off completely. Shadows pooled between aisles. The smell changed. Damp soil, fertilizer, old water, dead leaves. Rows of plants sat dry and brown, leaves curled inward. Plastic pots were cracked. Some shelves were empty, others stacked with bags of soil and mulch wrapped in torn plastic. The stacks rose high and uneven, like walls built without care. I remember thinking they looked like graves, not in a dramatic way, just in the sense that they marked where something had ended. We cut through fast. My friends were ahead of me, already joking about food and rides home. My shoe came loose near the middle aisle. I slowed down, bent over, and tied it tight. The sound of my friends faded. The quiet rushed in. That was when I heard breathing. It was slow, wet, not loud but steady. The kind of sound lungs make when they are working too hard. It did not come from behind me. It came from ahead, deeper in the garden center. It was close enough to hear clearly, but not close enough to feel on my skin. I stayed crouched for a moment, frozen with one hand still on my shoe. I told myself it was an employee, someone stocking late, someone sick, someone leaning over a pallet. The logic came fast because fear had not caught up yet. I stood slowly and took one step back. The breathing did not change. At the end of the aisle, between stacked pallets of fertilizer, something moved. I did not see a face. I did not see eyes. I saw an outline shift against darker shadow. It was low at first, close to the ground. Then the head lifted. Then the shoulders. Then the rest of the body followed, unfolding in stages. It was a person. I know that now. At the time, the movement felt wrong because it was careful and strained. The figure had been crouched for a long time. When it stood, it used the pallets to pull itself up. The spine straightened slowly, like it hurt. The height startled me because it rose higher than I expected, not taller than a person, but taller than the shape I had built in my head. The breathing got louder as the chest expanded. I could hear fluid in it. I could hear effort. The person stayed half hidden by the pallets. A hood or hat blended into the shadows. Clothes hung loose. The smell hit next, sharp and sour, layered over soil and rot. Sweat that had nowhere to go. Unwashed fabric. I did not scream. My voice felt locked behind my teeth. I did not call for my friends. They were already too far, and the space swallowed sound. I took one step backward, then another, slow enough to avoid drawing attention. My heel bumped into the metal frame of the door. It rattled softly. The figure shifted again. Not toward me, not away, just adjusting weight. The breathing stayed steady. I pushed the door open and backed through it into brighter light. My heart was loud now. My hands shook as I turned and walked, then sped up, then almost ran. I did not look back. Outside, the night air felt thin and cold. My friends were already halfway across the lot. They were laughing, still riding the high of the show. I caught up, lungs burning. No one asked where I had been. No one noticed the gap. They never realized I had been gone. I realized my jacket was not on my arm anymore. I must have set it down while tying my shoe. The thought of going back inside made my stomach drop. I shook my head and said nothing. We left. I did not sleep much that night. The image replayed without detail, just shape and sound. In the morning, with light and distance, the explanation came together. Garden centers are easy to slip into. The doors are wide. The alarms focus on the main store. Late at night, they are dim and forgotten. People without homes know this. So do people trying to avoid attention. The breathing fit someone sick, maybe with a chest infection, maybe injured. The crouching made sense if they were hiding when they heard us coming. The slow rise explained pain or stiffness. The height felt wrong only because fear bends perception. I learned later that our city had a problem with people sheltering in big stores overnight. Some hid behind pallets. Some slept on soil bags because they held heat. Employees did not always check garden center after midnight. Security focused on electronics and exits. The smell, the sound, the movement all lined up with a person who did not want to be seen and did not expect to be discovered. I never told my friends. There was nothing to gain from it. I stopped wearing that jacket. I avoided that Walmart. When I think about it now, what stays with me is not the shape in the dark. It is how easy it was to be alone without anyone noticing, and how close we had been to something real and human that still scared me more than anything unreal ever could. I went to Walmart because my power had been out since late afternoon and the snow kept coming down hard and wet. The kind that sticks to everything and drags branches low. The house felt dead without the hum of appliances. The fridge was warming. The stove was useless. I needed food that didn't require heat, and Walmart was the only place close enough that stayed open in weather like that. The drive there was slow. Snow blurred the edges of the road. Plows had not reached my street yet. The parking lot was half full, tracks carved in every direction. People moved fast, hunched, coats dusted white. The automatic doors opened and closed nonstop, letting in blasts of cold air that disappeared once you stepped inside. The store felt warmer than it should have. Not comfortable warm, heavy warm, like standing near a vent that was working too hard. My glasses fogged for a second. The smell hit me next, a mix of wet clothes, rubber, and baked bread from the front. The lights seemed brighter than usual, reflecting off the snow tracked across the floor. I grabbed a cart and moved through the aisles with purpose. Everyone else seemed tense. Shelves were thinner than normal. Bread was almost gone. Batteries were wiped out. People filled carts fast and avoided eye contact. I felt fine at first, just tired. Cold had a way of making warmth feel exaggerated once you stepped inside. I headed to frozen food because it made sense. Pizza, sandwiches, anything that could thaw and be eaten cold if needed. The aisle was quieter than the rest of the store. The freezer cases lined both sides. Doors fogged and streaked from hands opening and closing them all day. Cold air leaked out around the seals, but inside the aisle it still felt warm, almost humid. I stopped near the middle and stared at the options. Boxes stacked too high, bright colors, pictures that looked fake under fluorescent lights. The glass doors were fogged over in places, like breath had collected there and stayed. When the compressors kicked on, the doors vibrated softly. It sounded like slow breathing, not loud, just steady. I checked my phone out of habit. 7:52 p.m. No service issues, battery fine. I remember thinking I should hurry before the storm got worse. That thought sat there without urgency. The next memory does not connect cleanly. Suddenly, I was on the floor. The cold tile pressed through my jeans. My back leaned against the freezer case. My legs were out in front of me, awkward and stiff. An employee stood nearby, bent slightly at the waist, face tight with concern. I could tell they had asked something more than once because their posture had that waiting look. My head felt thick. Sounds came in delayed layers. The hum of the freezers felt too loud. My mouth was dry, tongue heavy. I nodded without knowing why. I looked for my cart. It wasn't there. I reached for my phone. My hands felt clumsy. The screen lit up. 9:11 p.m. I stared at the time longer than made sense. The numbers refused to line up with my last clear memory. My chest tightened. I tried to stand and had to pause halfway up, dizzy and off balance. The employee stayed close without touching me. Other shoppers passed, glancing and moving on. I was taken to a chair near customer service. Someone brought water. My cart never turned up. My groceries were gone or never collected. I left the store later with nothing but a headache and a hollow feeling behind my eyes. At home, the power was still out. The house felt colder than before. I sat on the couch wrapped in blankets and tried to replay what had happened. The gap would not fill. There was no dreamlike image, no sound, no fragment. Just a clean break between standing in the aisle and sitting on the floor. The next day, after the roads cleared, I went back. I needed answers more than groceries. I spoke with management. They reviewed security footage with me in a small office that smelled like old coffee. The camera angle showed the frozen food aisle from above. There I was, cart in front of me, hands resting on the handle. I stood facing the freezer doors. Minutes passed on the timestamp. Shoppers came and went. Carts rolled past. Someone opened a door near me. Cold air spilled out. I did not move. I did not shift my weight. I did not look down at my phone. My eyes stayed open, fixed on the fogged glass. My chest rose and fell slow and shallow. At one point, my cart was moved aside by an employee who assumed it was abandoned. I did not react. Time passed in chunks that made my stomach drop. 40 minutes, 50, an hour. Eventually, my knees buckled. I slid down the freezer door and sat on the floor. Even then, I did not move. That was when someone noticed. Watching myself stand there felt worse than any explanation I could imagine. There was no struggle, no collapse, just stillness. The store manager suggested I get checked out. I did. The clinic was busy with storm-related injuries, but I was seen. Blood pressure high, blood sugar low, dehydration, stress, lack of sleep, cold exposure before entering a warm environment. The doctor explained it carefully. Dissociative episodes happen, especially under physical stress. The body locks up, the brain checks out. People can stand, sit, even walk without forming memory. Time disappears because it was never recorded. Standing in front of the freezer made sense in a way that hurt. Cold air leaking out, heat inside the store, my body struggling to regulate. The fogged glass, the low vibration, a perfect place to stop moving without falling. I asked if it could happen again. The answer was honest. Yes. I changed how I shop after that. I eat before going out. I drink water. I avoid stores when I am exhausted or cold. I sit down if I feel strange instead of pushing through. I still think about that aisle when I stand in front of my freezer at home. About how normal it felt to stop without knowing I had stopped. About how many people walked past me while I was gone. What scares me is not losing time. It is how easy it was. How the store kept running. How nothing broke. How I stood there, breathing, eyes open, and no part of me was present to notice. I stopped at Walmart at 11:17 p.m. because the road ahead was dark and flat and my windshield had turned into a film of bugs and dust. I had been driving since late afternoon, pushing through because hotels were expensive and caffeine was cheaper. The blue sign rose out of the black like a dock light. The parking lot had wide empty rows. A few cars sat near the doors with engines off. The air smelled like warm asphalt and cut grass from the edges of the lot. Inside, the store felt hollow. The lights were bright but uneven, some buzzing louder than others. The floor reflected everything. My shoes made more sound than they should have. The place had that late-night stillness where every small movement feels exposed. A cart rattled somewhere far off and then went quiet. The shelves looked overstocked, boxes pushed forward, labels crooked from hands that were tired hours ago. I walked straight to automotive, grabbed windshield fluid, then cut through grocery for an energy drink. I noticed how few people were there. One employee stocking shelves at the far end. Another pushing a floor scrubber that left a damp shine. No one close enough to blend into. I felt alone in a way that sharpened my senses. The ceiling seemed lower than usual. Cameras hung like dark coins all angled down. At self-checkout, only 2 machines were open. I picked the one at the end. The scanner beeped once, clean and loud. The screen lagged when I scanned the fluid. The price appeared and then froze. The spinner turned. I waited, hands resting on the counter, eyes flicking to the aisle behind me. Nothing moved. The machine chirped and the receipt printer started. The screen still showed the frozen item. I reached for the paper out of habit, thinking it had caught up. The receipt was longer than it should have been. I felt that small hitch in my chest that comes when something is off but you do not know why yet. The items listed were not mine. Children's shoes, size 6. Heavy-duty trash bags. Bleach in bulk. Rope. The prices were normal. The quantities were normal. The combination was not. The total sat at the bottom, higher than what I had in my hand. The timestamp was printed near the top. It was 4 minutes ahead of the time on my phone. I checked the header for a different register number. It matched the one in front of me. I checked the date. It was correct. The machine beeped again and the screen unfroze, showing my 2 items like nothing had happened. The receipt kept printing until it dropped into the tray. I stood there longer than needed. I felt watched without feeling stared at. It was a pressure more than a sight line. The kind you get when you know someone has noticed a pattern about you. I folded the receipt once and held it. I looked up at the camera dome above the machine and then away. The store noise felt distant, like my ears had plugged. I canceled the transaction and walked out without my stuff. I did not want to fumble with bags. I wanted my hands free. The receipt stayed in my palm, damp from sweat. Outside, the air felt cooler than before. The lot lights hummed. I got into my car and locked the doors before I thought about it. I crumpled the paper and dropped it into the trash can by the exit. I watched it fall. I did not miss. The road took me east. The night opened up again. The feeling faded after a while, replaced by the normal focus of driving. I stopped once more for gas. I slept in my car for a few hours at a rest area. By morning, the receipt was a story I told myself about fatigue and late hours. 2 days later, I was cleaning my car in a motel lot. I pulled fast food wrappers from the cup holders and wiped the dash with a towel. I opened the glove compartment to look for napkins and felt paper slide against my fingers. The receipt sat there, folded once, the crease exactly where my thumb had bent it. I stared at it until the lot noise faded. I knew I had thrown it away. I knew I had not put it there. The paper smelled faintly of heat, the way thermal receipts do when they have been warm. The ink was sharp. The timestamp was still 4 minutes ahead. I sat on the curb and forced myself to think through it slowly. I took the receipt apart line by line. I noticed the transaction number. I noticed the register ID. I noticed the time format matched the store system, not my phone. I remembered how the printer had run longer than needed. I remembered how the tray had filled. I went back in my head to the moment I grabbed the paper. I had taken the top sheet. Self-checkout printers sometimes print duplicates when they glitch. Sometimes the roll feeds an extra copy and one sticks to the cutter. Thermal paper carries static. It clings. It slides into places without you feeling it. I had opened the glove compartment earlier that night to grab a charger. A second copy could have been resting against the dash, stuck there by heat and friction, and dropped inside when I closed it. The future timestamp had an explanation too. Store systems do not always sync perfectly. A register clock can be minutes off from the network. For minutes is nothing in a system that reboots between shifts. The wrong receipt could have been the previous transaction queued up and released when my screen froze. The items made sense in a town with families and farms. Trash bags and bleach are common. Rope sells everywhere. Children's shoes sell all day. What did not make sense was how it felt. That part stayed. I realized why later, after reading about how asset protection watches late-night transactions, how patterns flag on their screens, how empty stores amplify attention. I had been alone at a machine when it glitched. Cameras had pivoted. Someone in a back room had likely looked up, tracked movement, waited for a resolution. The feeling of being followed had been my own mind filling the quiet with purpose. I folded the receipt again and put it back in the glove compartment. I wanted it where I could see it if I needed to, I finished cleaning the car. I drove home in daylight. I slept in my own bed that night. Weeks passed. The receipt faded to gray at the edges. The ink lightened. Nothing else happened. No calls. No strange cars. No signs of anyone knowing where I was going next. The explanation held because it fit the facts and because time did what it always does to fear when there is nothing to feed it. I still do not shop late anymore. Not because I think someone is waiting, but because empty places make small errors feel like intent. Because tired systems fail in ways that look personal. Because once you have held a piece of paper that tells the wrong story at the wrong time, you understand how easy it is to believe it is about you. I worked electronics during the stretch when everything felt fragile. Masks on every face. Plexiglass bolted to counters that were never meant to have barriers. Blue tape on the floor showing where people were supposed to stand. Constant reminders over the speakers about distance and patience. The store smelled like disinfectant and hot plastic. My hands stayed dry and cracked from sanitizer. Anxiety felt like part of the uniform. Electronics sat near the front, bright even late at night. Screens glowed in rows. TVs looped the same ads. Phone cases hung on pegs in long, neat lines, colors repeating. The glass cases reflected everything. Faces, lights, movement. Even when the store was quiet, electronics never felt still. He started coming in on Thursdays, always the same time, 10 minutes before closing. I noticed because it was a dead zone hour. Most customers rushed in earlier or not at all. He never grabbed a cart or basket. He never touched merchandise. He walked straight to the phone cases and stood there. First, I assumed he was waiting for someone. Then I thought he was killing time. People did that late at night. But he did not look at the cases. He did not look at the prices or brands. He watched the glass, the reflections, screens catching pieces of the store behind him. He shifted his weight slowly, hands at his sides, eyes moving in small, careful tracks. I started timing it without meaning to. 7 minutes, 8, sometimes 9. Then closing announcements would echo, and he would leave without buying anything. No rush, no reaction, just a slow turn and a straight walk out. This happened every Thursday. I tried to ignore it. Electronics attracts odd behavior. People talk to screens. People stare. People linger. But the way he watched reflections stayed with me. He did not track people directly. He tracked their mirrored movement, the curve of glass, the black shine of powered-off tablets, the TV screens bouncing back shapes and light. I kept my badge flipped backward after the first few weeks. It was habit by then. Customers had gotten aggressive before. Names made things too personal. Management encouraged flipping badges during late shifts if it felt safer. One Thursday near the end of the month, he turned his head while I was straightening a display. His mask covered his face, but his eyes were clear and steady. He said my name. There was no reason for him to know it. My badge was backward. No one had said it near him. The store was quiet enough that I could hear the hum of the refrigerators across the aisle. The sound of my name landed flat and calm, like it had been practiced. I froze long enough to notice how normal everything else looked. Bright lights, sale signs, a cart rolling somewhere far away. My pulse climbed anyway. He did not say anything else. He looked back at the glass. The reflections swallowed him again. A minute later, he left like always. After that, my routines felt exposed. Every shift detail started to feel like evidence left out in the open. I wondered what else he knew. I told myself it could have been a guess. My name was common. That explanation worked until the next Thursday. That night, he stood in the same place and said things he should not have known. He mentioned that I left early on Tuesdays, that I took my breaks in my car, that I parked under the flickering light at the edge of the lot, the one that buzzed and dimmed every few seconds. Those were facts, boring ones, small ones, but they belonged to me. They belonged outside the store. I reported it to management. I filled out a form with shaking hands, trying to make it sound reasonable. Patterns, repeated behavior, personal information. They listened with tired faces. They nodded. They said he was probably homeless and harmless. They said a lot of people watched Reflections because of anxiety. They said there was no threat if he had not touched me or spoken aggressively. I asked about cameras. I asked about escorts to my car. They said they would keep an eye out. They said I could call if I felt unsafe. The next Thursday came. I braced for it all shift. Every movement in the corner of my vision felt louder. Closing time approached. The announcements played. The lights over certain aisles dimmed. He did not come in. Relief hit first, then confusion. My chest stayed tight anyway. I told myself not to read into it. Patterns break. People move on. I focused on shutting down displays and wiping counters. My car alarm went off while I was still on the clock. The sound cut through the store sharp and urgent. A manager waved me toward the door. My hands shook as I ran outside, keys already out. The parking lot was mostly empty. My car sat under the flickering light like always. The alarm blared and echoed off the building. I unlocked it. The noise cut off. Nothing looked wrong. Doors closed. Windows intact. No scratches. No signs of forced entry. Then I noticed the driver's mirror. It was folded in. I never fold it. It does not fold on its own. It requires pressure, a firm push. It was tucked in neatly, like someone had done it on purpose. Like someone had been standing there, close enough to touch it, careful enough not to leave damage. Security checked the cameras later. The angle missed that section of the lot. The flickering light washed out details. No one could be seen clearly. No one could be confirmed. After that, I changed everything. I switched shifts. I parked in different spots. I waited for escorts even when it felt awkward. I watched Reflections the way he had, scanning glass and screens for movement behind me. He never came back inside the store. I never saw him again. Months later, a police notice went up in the break room. A man had been arrested a few miles away for stalking retail workers. He used Reflections to watch without being noticed. He memorized schedules. He never touched anyone. He liked proximity. He liked knowing he could get close. The photo looked like him. Same build, same posture, same eyes. The explanation settled into place with weight instead of comfort. Nothing supernatural had happened. Nothing impossible. Just someone patient, observant, and ignored for too long. I quit not long after. Electronics still glows in my memory. Glass still feels like an open surface. I keep my mirrors unfolded now. I want to see everything, even when I wish I could not. I took the overnight inventory shift because I needed money fast after my divorce. I had moved into a small rental with bare walls and a mattress on the floor. I slept during the day and drove to work at night with the radio off because noise made my head spin. The Walmart sat alone off a state highway, a long rectangle of light surrounded by cornfields that went black as soon as the sun dropped. No houses nearby. No streetlights once you passed the last gas station. At night, the building felt like it floated in the dark. Inside, everything hummed. The lights buzzed in a flat, steady way. The freezers breathed. The air system never stopped. After midnight, the music shut off, and the silence made every sound feel closer. A cart rolling 2 aisles away sounded like it was right behind me. My shoes squeaked on polished concrete. When I stood still, I could hear my own breathing echo back from the shelves. Inventory work was simple but slow. Scan, count, write, move on. I liked the routine because it kept my mind from drifting. I worked alone most of the time. Other overnight staff were spread out across the store, each assigned a zone. The aisles felt longer at night. End caps looked taller. Shadows gathered at the top shelves where the lights did not quite reach. Aisle 19 was sporting goods. Fishing rods, tackle boxes, camping gear, and locked cases with ammo behind thick glass. The floor there always smelled faintly of rubber and oil. I reached it around 2:40 a.m., pushing my cart with the scanner clipped to my belt. That was when I first noticed movement at the far end. Not fast, just a shift like someone stepping out of sight. I pushed the cart closer. The movement stopped. The aisle was empty. I walked down, checking labels and counting boxes stacked on the lower shelves. When I looked up again, something moved near the end cap. I felt my shoulders tighten. I told myself it was another worker passing through. The store had cameras everywhere. Nothing bad was supposed to happen inside. I pushed closer again. The aisle went still. No footsteps, no cart noise, just the hum. The locked ammo cases reflected my vest and the lights above, turning my shape into broken pieces. I finished the count at the front half and moved deeper. That was when I noticed the mirrors. Walmart uses half-dome security mirrors at aisle intersections. They bend the space so you can see around corners. I had walked past them 100 times without thinking. This time I glanced up and saw myself from above, hunched over a box, pen moving across paper. Behind me in the mirror stood something tall. It did not move, stood straight with arms hanging low, longer than mine. The shape was narrow and dark, almost blending into the shelves. The head brushed the line of light near the ceiling. My stomach dropped hard, like missing a step on stairs. I turned around fast. The aisle was empty. No carts, no people. I could see all the way to the end. My heart hammered in my ears. I waited, holding my breath, listening for footsteps. Nothing. I looked back at the mirror. The shape was still there, closer now. The arms hung at a slight angle, like the weight was uneven. The height felt wrong. No one on overnight was that tall. I forced myself to think. Mirrors distort distance. The dome could pull shapes together. Could be a stack of boxes from another aisle lining up just right. I took a step sideways to change the angle. The shape shifted with me. I turned again. Empty. I stood there longer than I meant to, trying to slow my breathing. My hands shook. I felt exposed, like the shelves had eyes. I told myself to finish the count and move on. Leaving work unfinished would bring questions, and I did not want attention. As I worked, I kept my eyes low. The scanner beeped too loud. Every sound felt sharp. When I reached the end of the aisle, I glanced at the mirror again. The shape was closer still, now filling more of the glass. I could see the outline clearer. It was not smooth. The shoulders sloped unevenly. One arm looked longer than the other. I turned. Nothing. Sweat ran down my back under the vest. The air felt thicker. I pushed the cart out of the aisle and finished the last numbers with shaking hands. I did not look back again. When I reached the next section, I leaned against the shelf and waited until my heart slowed. The rest of the shift passed without incident, but the feeling stayed with me. At dawn, the store filled with soft morning light, and the cornfields outside turned gray. I drove home exhausted and slept poorly, waking with the image of the mirror burned into my mind. The next night, I tried to avoid aisle 19, but inventory schedules are fixed. When I reached the intersection near sporting goods, I stopped short. The mirror had been covered with a black trash bag tied tight around the mount. Another mirror down the aisle was gone entirely, leaving a pale square on the wall where it had been. I finished my tasks quickly and stayed in busier areas. I did not see the shape again, but the sense of being watched followed me. A few days later, after my shift ended, my supervisor called me into the small office near the back. There was no small talk. I was told not to worry about aisle 19 and that overnight staff no longer worked it alone. No details were given. My schedule was changed to days starting the next week. The move should have been a relief. Daylight made the store feel smaller and safer. Families filled the aisles. Music played. The mirrors were back, uncovered, reflecting shoppers and carts. But the image stuck with me. I started paying attention to details I had ignored before. I noticed how the mirrors bent people, stretching arms and legs. I watched how a tall person pushing a cart could look much taller when reflected from a low angle. I learned that sporting goods had a history of problems. Theft attempts after midnight. Someone had been hiding in the store during closing, waiting near the ammo cases. There had been an incident weeks before I started, involving a person found after hours in a restricted area. I was not told this directly. I pieced it together from schedules changing, cameras being adjusted, and quiet caution during training refreshers. One afternoon, while working days, I walked past aisle 19 and noticed a tall cardboard display leaning against the back wall. waiting to be set up. It was shaped like a hunter holding a rifle, arms long and dark against the print. From the right angle, in a curved mirror, it would look like a person standing still. I stood where the mirror would have been and imagined the view. My chest tightened. I also learned that the dome mirrors had been repositioned after complaints about blind spots. The old angle had reflected the back storage corridor through a gap between shelves. Anyone standing there would appear closer than they were. Someone tall, wearing dark clothes, standing still to avoid cameras. The realization settled slowly and brought no comfort. It meant there had been a real person in the store with me that night. Someone who knew how to stay hidden. Someone watching me work, closing the distance without making a sound. I finished out the week, but sleep became hard. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the mirror and the way the shape crept closer without moving. I imagined how easy it would be to stand still in a store that big, to wait, to watch reflections instead of the aisle itself. I quit a week later. I told myself it was for my health, for a fresh start. The truth was simpler. I could not shake the feeling that I had been counted too, not as an employee, but as a target. My brother and I stopped at Walmart after midnight on the drive back from New Mexico because the gas station food had worn us down and the air conditioner in the car was struggling against the heat. We had been on the road since early afternoon, crossing long stretches of desert and scrub where the land flattened out and the sky stayed wide even after dark. The night felt heavy, the kind of heat that sticks to the back of your neck and makes your clothes feel damp without any sweat showing. Cicadas were loud enough to feel constant, like static layered over everything else. The Walmart sat just off the highway, a low concrete box surrounded by a sea of parked cars that were mostly empty at that hour. Tall light poles cast white circles across the lot, sharp and bright, with shadows pooling between them. We slowed as we pulled in, both of us quiet in that tired way where conversation feels like work. I remember noticing how the air smelled faintly of hot asphalt and dust, how the engine noise dropped away once we parked, leaving only the insects and the distant hum of trucks passing on the highway. We were halfway across the lot when I saw movement near the far row of cars. At first it looked like a trick of the light, something shifting between shadows. Then it resolved into a person moving between vehicles low to the ground. Not crawling in a clumsy way, not scrambling. The motion was fast and smooth, arms and legs working in a pattern that looked practiced. Knees bent wide, elbows tucked in. The joints seemed to flex at angles that made my stomach tighten. The person moved on all fours, crossing from one shadow to the next, staying low under the glare of the lights. The head stayed down. I could not see a face, just a shape that moved with intent. The speed made it worse. There was no hesitation, no wobble. It looked controlled. My first reaction was to tell myself it was drugs. That explanation slid into place because it had to. People did strange things under the influence, especially in towns along highways. The idea of a person acting unpredictably because they were high felt safer than anything else. My brother saw it too. I could tell by the way his steps slowed and then matched mine again. Neither of us stopped. Neither of us turned around. We kept walking toward the entrance, the sliding doors glowing under the canopy. The cicadas seemed louder as we got closer to the building, their sound bouncing off the concrete. The person in the lot disappeared behind a pickup truck and did not reappear. I focused on the reflection in the glass ahead of us, on our own shapes stretching long and thin. When we reached the doors, I noticed the handprints. They were smeared across the glass on the outside, dusty and dark, pressed high enough that I had to tilt my head to take them in. 5 fingers on each hand, spread wide. The marks showed deep pressure, the heel of the palm thick and clear. The dust around them was lighter, as if the hands had been pushed hard and then lifted away. They were too high up. Even if someone jumped, the placement felt wrong. The spacing between the prints suggested the person had been steady, not in motion. The glass was clean everywhere else, wiped down recently, which made the marks stand out more. I imagined someone standing close, reaching up, pressing both hands flat against the doors. Inside, the store felt overly warm. The air conditioning struggled, and the heat lingered in the wide open space. The lights buzzed faintly overhead. The place was mostly empty, just a few shoppers scattered far apart, a cart rattling somewhere in the distance. The floors were clean enough to reflect the light, but there was grit tracked in near the entrance. We moved through the aisles with purpose, grabbing items that did not need cooking. Bottled water, bread, packaged snacks. My awareness stayed sharp, tuned to movement at the end of each aisle. Every time a shadow shifted, my shoulders tightened. I noticed the way the freezers hummed, the way the store made its own constant noise that masked smaller sounds. As we walked, I kept replaying the image of the person in the lot. The way the back curved, the rhythm of the limbs. It did not look playful. It did not look like a stunt. It looked like someone moving the way they needed to move. At the self-checkout area, I caught sight of a smear of dirt on the floor near one of the machines, a long streak that looked like something had been dragged or slid. It led toward the front of the store and disappeared near the doors. The mark was faint, easy to miss if you were not already looking for signs of something out of place. We finished quickly and headed back toward the entrance. The handprints were still there, unchanged. From inside, they looked even darker against the bright store lights. The doors slid open with a soft mechanical sound, and the heat hit again, thicker now that we had been inside. The parking lot looked the same at first glance. Empty rows, bright circles of light, shadows layered between cars. Our vehicle sat where we had left it, alone in the row. As we walked toward it, something on the roof caught my eye. The top of the car was coated in a fine layer of dust, the kind that settles overnight in dry places. Centered near the middle were handprints. They were clearer than the ones on the doors. The dust had been disturbed, palms pressed flat, fingers curved slightly as if gripping the metal. The spacing suggested someone had been crouched there, weight balanced over the roof. The prints were not smeared. They were deliberate. I stood there staring at them, heat prickling along my arms. The explanation tried to form again, thin and unconvincing. Someone messing around. Someone high. Someone climbing cars for reasons that did not involve us. The prints were centered, though, not near the edges where someone might grab while sliding off. Centered like a perch. We got in and left. The engine turned over, the headlights cut across the lot, and the road opened up ahead of us. The cicadas faded as we pulled back onto the highway, replaced by the steady rush of air through the windows. We drove without stopping until the land changed, until the road signs showed different county names. Only then did the tension ease enough for me to breathe normally again. The night stayed hot, but it felt less close. Days later, back home, I looked up local news from the area. It did not take long to find something that fit. A brief article mentioned a man arrested after multiple reports of vehicle damage in a Walmart parking lot off the highway. He had been found hiding between cars, covered in dust and oil, suffering from severe meth-induced psychosis. Security footage showed him moving low to the ground to avoid cameras, climbing onto cars to watch people enter the store, pressing his hands against the glass doors to steady himself while peering inside. Employees had noticed the prints in the morning and called it in. The article included a still image from the footage. The man was thin, shirtless, joints bent sharply as he moved between vehicles. His posture made his limbs look wrong, almost folded in on themselves. The timestamp matched the hour we had been there. The explanation settled everything into place. The speed, the height of the prints, the dust on the roof. There was no mystery left. Just a person in a bad state, acting on impulse and paranoia, using the cars and the building as cover and vantage points. Knowing that did not erase the memory of seeing him move under the lights or the feeling of standing by our car with those handprints above us. It made it worse in a way. The threat had been real, close, and entirely human. We had shared that space for a few minutes in the middle of the night, surrounded by heat and insects and the hum of a store that never closed, watched without knowing it by someone crouched above us, waiting for reasons that had nothing to do with ghosts or monsters and everything to do with how fragile people can become.